Welcome to Grief Uprooted, a podcast dedicated to sharing your grief stories. Together, we embark on the mystery of one's grief journey as they learn to live, heal, and be courageous in a world rooted in trauma. Join myself, Christine, in an open discussion to help you uproot the grief in all our lives. I am an award-winning author, professional speaker, and humanitarian in the field of grief and trauma. I want you to be part of the discussion. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and we often refer it as a day of celebrating couples, but it's evolved. Valentine's Day is about celebrating love. Love with our families, love with friends. It's truly about love, even loving ourselves. Today's episode, we're going to explore Valentine's Day and the triggers it may bring in the world of grief. If you're grieving, all sorts of different things that happen to us, such as the death of a loved one, the divorce, um, even the loss of a pet. Um, you know, these are things that bring great love to us and make us feel wonderful inside. And I think that sometimes we don't realize that grief is truly love that just doesn't have anywhere to go. I want to say that again. Grief is truly love, but it has no place to go. So, in today's episode, we're going to explore all the different forms of love that we have in our life. And we're also going to explore how do we deal with the grief in our life. But the true main point of this episode is love is truly grief with no place to go. Let's go. So there is a phrase in the world of grief that says grief exists because love existed. So many times people ask me, why am I grieving so hard? Why does my heart hurt so much? That's because you've experienced love. If you had not experienced love for a person, an animal, you would not be grieving, because it truly is like a coin with two sides. If you choose to love somebody, you're truly choosing to grieve that person too at one point in your life. So many times, you know, we we want to avoid the pain. We want to say, well, I don't want to deal with the pain. But we also can't survive without love. So it is a coin with two sides, and one is love and one is grief. And Valentine's Day has really evolved. And it's evolved in such a way that we're not just celebrating romantic relationships or sexual relationships with our partners. Um, we're seeing people having parties called Galentines. I know my girls are. And, I was like, what is this? And I'm 53, right? And so we're used to um, the husband or the boyfriend coming with the flowers and being all romantic. And my girls were like, well, we're having a Galentine party. And one is having it right on Valentine's Day. And I'm like, well, like, she has a fiance. And she says, but this is a celebration of my girlfriends and the love of a friendship. And then my soon to be daughter in law is also doing this. And then my teenage daughter is doing this. And I can't tell you the joy it brought to me as a woman of 53, because it made me realize that these young girls, or hearing us. Wow. But they are realizing that the love of their girlfriends and the love of their friends, and it's more than girlfriends, it's just friendship. That they're inviting people of all genders, of all walks of life that have brought love into their life. And you know, I obviously didn't say, well, you realize that eventually, you may be grieving those people if they decide to end the friendship, if they unfortunately die. But the way that these young girls are embracing Valentine's Day to me was amazing. They were still doing things that they wanted to do that were the traditional way. Um, but I love that they were embracing it as more than just a day for a intimate, romantic, or sexual couple. They were incorporating all the love in their life, including self-love, which I thought was pretty awesome because at these Galentine parties, not only do you eat charcuterie boards and drink wine, but you pamper yourself too with facials and things like that. So definitely think I should get in on this party. So the other part that I wanted to talk about was also, to dive into that heavy grief. Um, and that is the death of a spouse. This is such a hard time because when we are losing really so many people who come on that are grieving widows say, I've lost like my right arm. It's like losing a part of your body. um, and exploring somatics is where grief is held in the body. I often think that's such a great analogy, that it's like somebody cut your arm off, because our body does carry our grief. And Valentine's Day can trigger you because you're going back through all these traditional things you did with your spouse. Maybe you had a tradition that you did. Um, and it's very difficult to go, how do I move forward in this tradition? Like, if my husband has passed and we always went to this restaurant, how do I continue forward? For the first 2 years for Valentine's Day, you may not want to return to that restaurant. But what happens over time as that grief integrates, you realize the love that you have inside of you is still there. See, the coin, you can't take a quarter or a loonie or a toonie and take off one side. You just can't. It's two-sided. So the love never left. The grief overpowered it, but the love that you felt for your spouse is still there. The coin is just slowly turning. And for some of us, it's spitting, and we think we're crazy because we're going from love to grief, love to grief. We're going through all these emotions. I don't know how many times I hear the word crazy on this episode from my guests, and I always say, you're not crazy. But in this case, with Valentine's Day, you're jumping back and forth. You're jumping back and forth from the love to the grief. And eventually, you will find comfort in revisiting these things. And you will feel that love again of your loved one who has died. In no way, shape, or form does it ever replace their loss in your life. And I speak that as a grieving individual. And you just, it's horrifying. It's horrifying to think about. But you are changed for life. But what happens is you find that love and joy again, but it's different. It's very different. And this kind of moves me into other losses or deaths. You can say a death of a relationship. Right now, the terminology for grief, because it's become so uh, like we're talking about it now. That's what I love about Grief Uprooted, and people are talking about it. So there are some terminologies we're changing as we all start talking about this more, and they would love the industry to always use the word death. So that, and that was really more with working with children, because that means a finality. When we say loss, that means we could find somebody. But in the incidence of divorce, it's not, that relationship died, but not the husband or the wife. So sometimes I like to say that's a loss that I've experienced because it is capable of being found if you wanted to return to it, or it's a different way of grieving. And that's what Grief Uprooted is. So, it's to look at all these forms of grief. So, Valentine's Day comes along and you're newly divorced. Some of you may be celebrating your asses off. I know that. I've seen the parties on Facebook, and now it's popular to have a divorce party. But, you know, in all of that, behind that closed door is those memories of past Valentine's days. And those Valentine's Day can be super struggle, like super, super, super hard to deal with. Because one, they might have been romantic and they might have been something that you always looked for. And now Valentine's Day comes back and you're reminded about this. Another thing is that Valentine's Day comes and that relationship has broke off and it was never what you wanted it to be. Maybe Valentine's was always a fight in that relationship. So, you had these expectations and you may be grieving that you wasted all that time. There's so many different things we could grieve that the main point of this is to realize that love, this day that was created all about love.
We interrupt this podcast for a dirty moment.
My dirty moment. Valentine's Day is here. And my dirty moment or trigger is kind of in the future. I often think about Valentine's Day, and it's actually the day that my parents got married. So every Valentine's Day, we celebrated my parents' anniversary. And they even celebrated it so much that I remember our local newspaper, they were on the front of the newspaper. I was a writer, and I wrote to the local newspaper about my parents and how they got married on Valentine's Day. And now, as my parents are aging and I am taking them to doctor's appointments and things like that, and partly maybe my career and the reality I have in life with dealing with grief is I worry about Valentine's Day. I think, you know, that love that they showed me as a child and things like that. Um, so I always tell myself on Valentine's Day that it's about all the love in my life, not just about the love of my parents, but it's always related to my parents. And as they age, sometimes I get triggered and my eyes welt because I think, what will my life be like without them? Mm. So that's my dirty moment. And what I do with that is tell myself that I have a beautiful family, I have beautiful children, and I have an enormous amount of love, not only from my family and friends, but from all of you. So, for my trigger and dirty moment, it kind of feels like it's a future thing because my parents are alive and healthy and fine. Um, but for that moment, I usually take a text or I pick up the phone and call them, or I think about them and how I am extremely lucky to still have both my parents and all the love that I have around me with my family and friends, including you, the listener. That's my dirty moment. It's actually the opposite of grief. And so many people don't want to grieve, but everybody wants to love, which I don't blame you. I want to love too. But if we could just accept that this is the opposite, we would understand a little more about why we're grieving, why we're feeling this pain. And it is a human condition to live and die. We have no control over that. None. I know we're trying to find that control, but we don't. It is really something that just comes with love. So then the other one I want to step into is the loss or death of a pet. And I want to say this in a few different forms because this is what I do on a daily basis. With Robert's Press, we create and distribute products that help people when they're grieving. So I've seen it all. And with the death of a pet, so many people say, I don't understand why the death of the pet is affecting me more than the loss of a friend, or I'm crying more with the pet. Your pet, he sees you behind closed doors. They're there to comfort you. And it's a daily ritual of seeing your pet, of loving your pet. And I'm sorry, animals give you the most unconditional love you could possibly ask for. They really do. And that love, sadly, is short lived because their lifespan is shorter. And then you find yourself grieving. And you remember, those times that pet was there for you. Does it directly correlate with Valentine's? Maybe not. But what if you were single? What if, on Valentine's, yeah, you didn't have a Valentine? Do you know how many in my generation? I don't think this generation. I think these people have this right by celebrating all love in their life. But if you didn't have, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you you were bummed out. Valentine's sucked. If you weren't asked to the Valentine's dance or you didn't get a Valentine card, um, yeah, you were kind of left out. And that meant that, as a child and a teenager, I'm sure as adults we understand, but you were like, oh, I'm not loved. And I remember being a little girl, one thing my father did and my mother, because I'm sure she had some hand in it, was on Valentine's, under the age of like 10, he would always hand me a chocolate, like a chocolate heart or something Valentine-y that was candy. And it just represented the love of my father and the love of my parents for me. And I carried that tradition on because I felt like I wanted my children to know it was a day of love. And I think that as it slowly transforms to a day of love, um, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. But I think also recognizing the love you had in your life and how that love has molded you is really a great focus to have instead of focusing on, of course, people out there who have, the love of their life still in front of them. I hope if you're listening to this, realize how grateful you should be. Realize how, I want to say blessed, but, realize that you should take a moment and really, really, really embrace and allow that love to wash over you and feel it because it is so amazing to be in that position. Um, but for those who are grieving, um, recognizing all the love you've had in your life on this day is such a great way to make it through Valentine's. Another love that I wanted to kind of touch on was the loss of a child and horrific miscarriage. Um, you know, this, hmm, I understand why people say I have no words. I don't know how to talk about this because the death of a child is just excruciating. Um, but again, I know every time I have somebody on here and I'm interviewing them, they light up when I say, tell me your child's name, tell me about them. And there are those memories that are embedded not only in your mind, but in your heart. And those live forever. I know a piece of your heart has been literally taken out. It's like those two hearts in one. Um, it is that that inner piece of your heart. It's like a small little heart was ripped from yours and went with that child. But there's always that bond. There's always that connection. That is something nobody can take away. Nobody can relate to. That is a parent and a child's bond. Um, and just remembering those times and knowing that loving that child and that child reciprocating that love back to you um, is amazing. It truly is. And it is called unconditional love. And I often say to people, you should be so proud of yourself that you had that ability to love at those depths. But then your grief. And when we love at a depth like that, our grief is stronger. Our grief is a full body, full heart, full mind, full spirit experience. It's debilitating. It can take us off our rails. It changes, literally transforms and changes an individual. I have never seen anybody in all my 24 years in this industry who has lost a child been the exact same person. They are changed. And that change happens over time and it integrates into who they are, that grief. Um, and some changes are profoundly amazing, and some changes are not. But that's your grief and your path. And you have to understand that the grief we're feeling is from that love that we felt. So I want to kind of walk now into looking at how do we kind of know what to do on this day? Because I know a lot of my single friends now are at the Valentine party. They get together with friends and have dinner, and it's become really a celebration. Like even if you are married or you're not married or you're in a relationship with somebody, committed relationship or however the dynamics are of your relationship, people are still going out in groups to have fun, which I think is amazing because you're celebrating the love you have in your life. And I think even touching on the loss of our parents, the loss of our loved ones, it's really celebrating the love that you've experienced in your life. And that love can come in so many different forms. Um, and I think that is where I want to go with this, is being able to give Valentine's Day, um, and the love you've experienced in your life a new form. And this is just evolution, if you ask me. When people say, well, now what do I do on Valentine's Day? Or I'm grieving and I don't know what to do at the holidays. Well, you're evolving. You've experienced a human condition that we will all experience. It is awful. It's about the worst experience you'll have. Um, but now you're evolving. And we're preparing the next generation for this. This is why I love all these celebrations of love together. But we're also needing new ways for you to make it through Valentine's Day. So finding a new form, finding an idea of, how are you going to connect with that loved one who has died? And one of those ways is writing a love letter. Just being able to write a love letter to your partner who may have died, writing a love letter to all the people who have impacted you and created who you are and the love that you've experienced, and just keeping it, you know, being able to keep that in a journal, or knowing that it's really part of you and this is what created you, because our ancestors are the ones that have helped us get where we are, good or bad. And, it can be a day of honoring the love in your life that was there is still there but might not be seen, um, and what love may come your way. I'm one of those people that love candles, so I love always getting a Bath and Body. They have Valentine's candles, and I guess it's for romantic times, but everything's about grief when it comes to me. I love getting it and lighting it on Valentine's Day just to remind myself that when I walk by it, it's all the love that's been in my life, because I would not be sitting here in front of you if it wasn't for all those people. Um, and another one, as usual. So, number one, give your love a new form. Uh, the second one is, I really would love for you to allow yourself to feel. I know, and every time I give you tips, I will say, I've got 5 things or 4 things, and every one of them has allow yourself to feel, because that is so important in becoming a Reiki master and exploring the somatics of the body and how grief sits in it. When we don't allow ourselves to feel because the grief is too much, then you're not allowing yourself to love. I want to say that again because I think sometimes people just don't get it. When we don't allow ourselves to grieve, we are not allowing ourselves to love. It's kind of like if you take the quarter that has 2 sides, the coin, if you don't allow the one side to feel the pain of grief, then you've devalued the quarter. It's only worth 20 cents now because you won't allow yourself to love. They're polar opposite. So many times when people come and say, I can't feel love anymore, I can't celebrate a holiday, I don't love anyone. I've had many people say, my eyes don't work anymore. I don't cry. Like I'm crying, but tears don't come. It's like I ran out of tears. And what that says to me is you haven't allowed your body to grieve. So you've shut down the love. So things won't run right. In order for your love to come back, in order for you to recall memories, we need to be able to feel grief. And if we don't feel grief, we will never feel love again. And there's ways to do that. And the one way is to start feeling, start talking, listen to the podcast, keep yourself moving. That's what we need to do, moving down the path towards resilience. The other one is seek connection. I think these Valentine parties, amazing, great idea. Going out for dinner with friends and family, great idea. It is no longer an expectation in society to be married all the time, no longer an expectation to be in a relationship all the time. I think it is okay for people to be single and be comfortable as single. Um, and we're celebrating love. And that's what we're ultimately celebrating. We're celebrating the love in our lives. So, yeah, go out and say, "Hey, let's go for a coffee on Valentine's Day. Let's eat a donut." I only say that because Tim Hortons has come out with this great Valentine's donut, and I keep seeing it in my mind. So, even saying, let's go for a coffee and try out the new, I'm sure Starbucks has a Valentine cake pop going on too. That's a great way to celebrate the love in your life. Then the other thing I was going to share with you is here at Grief Uprooted and Robert's Press, we're always kind of trying to come out with things to help the grieving. So I love that for Valentine's, my team got together, and I'm going to show you the brown one first. They came out with the memory heart. I don't know if you can, I have to figure out where the camera is. There we go. So I love this idea. So there's the brown one, there's the marble one, And there is this white one. Oh, that one's definitely, there we go. So there's the three colors of these hearts. And what I love is on the back, so there's one heart and then another heart inside. So there's two hearts, and I'm going to read you the poem. A piece of your heart, light as air, yet I still feel you everywhere. One half I keep, the other you hold, a timeless link, both strong and bold. Though apart, we still remain two hearts entwined, one grieving soul. Through loss, through time, our tie remains, your memory forever in my heart. The memory heart was created because so many times in love and in grief, it's like part of our heart is taken. Part of our heart dies with our loved one. And the memory heart gives you that opportunity to either place the inner heart with your loved one, with your pet that may have died, or sometimes I feel, um, you know, I do it with fellow people who are grieving, that it's like part of our hearts have left. And I've actually, with people, I've done the brown and then the marble and said, let's switch hearts. And it's really just a way for us to realize that grief and love are the same. And grief is just love, but with no place to go. And the memory heart really gives you really a chance to share your grief and share your love all at the same time. So, you know, great product for Valentine's Day. I'm very excited about it. It's Canadian made. Um, and I think it's just such a great addition to the products we carry at robertspress.com. So you can check it out there, but you can even do this at home. And that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. Um, this little heart, you can walk and buy stickers or there's felt foams and there's two in one. So if you're working with children right now that are dealing with the loss of a parent, a loss of a sibling, and you want to do a craft, you can go to the stores. You're more than welcome to purchase these, but you can do that craft. And often there's like a felt sticker and it has another heart inside. I saw them at Michael's actually this week. Then you can get a bunch of those. And it really helps explain how grief still leaves you with a heart. It still leaves you with, you know, you still have that heart and you still have that love, but part of it has been taken and given to your loved one. Part of it was left when your child died. Part of it left when you had that miscarriage. Part of it left when you lost your pet. Part of it left when, a relationship died. Part of it left maybe when you lost your way in life. We experience grief in so many different forms. And Memory Heart allows you to have that ability to kind of acknowledge that and in an outward way, um, which I think is great. So I also kind of wanted to really just touch on that um, Valentine's Day was started for couples. And I think last year I did an episode that talked about the history of Valentine's. And I'm excited that a year later, I'm talking to you about celebrating love. And that's really what Valentine's Day is about. We're celebrating love. And I think that's the most important thing. So I want to leave you with this. When you are sitting there on Valentine's Day, this February the 14th, which is actually a Friday, take a moment and acknowledge all the love in your life. Acknowledge everybody that was in your life that is in your life and that will be in your life that bring you love. And realize that all of that love that you're feeling for others and all that grief you may be experiencing comes from your ability to love and love deep. It comes from your ability. It comes from your self-love. Valentine's Day is here to celebrate the love in your life. And grief is here. And it is just a form of love that has no place to go. Thank you for tuning in to Grief Uprooted. I truly appreciate you all. And as usual, I thank you for liking me on all my social media platforms. I thank you for tuning in. And I appreciate all of you. And I thank you for all the love and support you have sent my way. Because if it wasn't for the love of all of you out there, I wouldn't be continuing with Grief Uprooted. So I thank you for all the love and support. And it is only together that we can grieve, and it is only together that we can heal. Take care, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day.
Grief Uprooted professional grief and empowerment coaching are not to be used as a substitute for professional advice by legal, medical, financial, business, spiritual, or other qualified professionals. All our products and services are designed for grief empowerment through learning and sharing of one's lived experiences.